My name is Marilyn, and for 5 years, I've been in a loving relationship with my boyfriend, Peter. We took our commitment a step further 3 years ago, deciding to live together with dreams of tying the knot someday. The only step remaining to make it official was the marriage registration. Peter, however, cherished the idea of having a wedding ceremony once we could afford it. I was more practical, believing it was wise to complete the registration first and plan the ceremony later. But Peter was adamant that we should marry before anything else. During these discussions, I discovered I was pregnant. Excited, I shared the news with Peter, expecting joy. Instead, his reaction was lukewarm, his eyebrows knitting in confusion, as if questioning the timing of my pregnancy. Despite his reaction, I argued for the necessity of registration before our child's birth, to avoid any legal complications regarding our baby's legitimacy. Peter listened, but maintained that the proper sequence, wedding first, registration after, was crucial to him. As my pregnancy advanced, Peter's stance didn't change, despite my continued pleas. My friends and family began questioning our future, wondering if I would end up a single mother. Regardless of their concerns, without Peter's agreement, my hands were tied. Then, unexpectedly, in the final month of my pregnancy, Peter had a change of heart. He suggested we register our marriage, recognizing the oddity of potentially having to adopt his child. Relieved yet cautious, I agreed, and we decided to act immediately. But when I submitted our marriage registration, an unexpected twist occurred. A city official informed me that I couldn't marry Peter because, according to their records, I had just been divorced. Something utterly unknown to me. I was bewildered, having never been married or divorced. The official suggested a bizarre mix-up, a fraudulent divorce filing possibly to exploit immigration laws, involving someone of foreign nationality, a stranger to me. The situation became a legal nightmare. The city office couldn't proceed with our marriage registration due to a civil code requiring a 120-day waiting period post-divorce. This law aims to clearly establish paternity, but in our case, it only added to the confusion and delay. This revelation left us in limbo. Our plans to marry and welcome our child into a legally recognized family unit derailed. We were advised to consult the police for resolution, facing a heartbreaking wait and a future filled with uncertainty, all while expecting the arrival of our child, whom Peter and I knew without a doubt was ours. In our confusion and disbelief, Peter joined us, sensing the tension in the air. He questioned what was wrong, but the city official, realizing he could offer no further assistance, excused himself, leaving us alone with our turmoil. I stood there, wrestling with the thought of revealing the shocking news to Peter. He had just resolved to marry me, and I feared that disclosing the truth might lead him to reconsider. The thought of how this would affect our unborn child weighed heavily on me. Yet, as I grappled with fear, a surge of anger took hold. It was unfathomable that I was caught in this predicament without any wrongdoing on my part. Peter noticed my distress and demanded to know what was happening. In a moment of panic, I blurted out, "The police," and made a run for it. But he was quick to follow, catching up and insisting on an explanation. I realized then that avoiding the truth would only escalate the situation. Gathering my courage, I shared everything I had learned from the city official. Peter's reaction was one of disbelief. He couldn't fathom that I, who knew no foreigners and had longed to marry him, could be implicated in such a situation. As Peter tried to reassure me, his complexion paled, likely contemplating the ramifications of our plans to marry. Yet, he suggested we should forego involving the police, a proposal that left me bewildered. His reasoning seemed to downplay the urgency of our dilemma, suggesting a passive acceptance of the waiting period before we could marry. This nonchalance was perplexing, especially considering the implications for our child, who, under these circumstances, would be recorded as adopted in our family registry. Peter's attempts to pacify me did little to quell my frustration. How could we stand by and do nothing, accepting a situation that would not only affect us but also leave a lasting impact on our child? His insistence on avoiding the police, coupled with his peculiar calmness, sparked suspicion. His concern seemed less about the divorce history and more about the potential consequences of involving law enforcement. Despite his reservations, I couldn't shake off the feeling that we needed to take action to clarify this misunderstanding and safeguard our future. The thought of our child growing up with mistaken identity in the family registry was unbearable. Peter's stance, while seemingly pragmatic, felt like a surrender to circumstances beyond our control, ignoring the deeper issues at play. As we stood at a crossroads, the contrast between Peter's outward calm and inner anxiety became apparent. His reluctance to involve the police hinted at a deeper fear, perhaps of the unknown repercussions such an investigation might bring. Yet, in my heart, I knew that passivity was not an option. The well-being of our unborn child and the integrity of our family unit demanded that we seek the truth, even if it meant facing the challenges head-on. The journey to the police station might be fraught with uncertainty, but it was a necessary step towards rectifying this bewildering situation and protecting our future. Peter tried to reassure me, suggesting that consulting the police wouldn't immediately resolve our situation or allow us to marry right away. He reasoned that if a consultation could lead to an instant marriage, it might be worthwhile, but since that wasn't possible, he viewed it as an unnecessary delay. His attempt to calm me, offering to get a drink while I sat, plunged me into deep thought. As I reminisced about our relationship, I realized how Peter had always found excuses to delay our marriage. His reaction to my pregnancy and his apparent disinterest in our future together troubled me. Despite his recent willingness to register our marriage, his calm demeanor and reluctance to involve the police raised further doubts. Returning with a drink, Peter attempted to lighten the mood, opting for juice over coffee, mindful of our unborn child. Yet, despite his efforts, my mind was clouded with suspicion. I questioned his motives behind our rushed marriage decision, especially in light of the recent divorce revelation. Peter's response, marked by a forced smile and evasive comments, only deepened my concerns. His unease became apparent, betraying signs of dishonesty. As I pressed for the truth, Peter's defenses began to crumble. He admitted that the push for a quick marriage was driven by financial needs, not a desire to commit to our relationship. The realization that he had been planning this, watching the calendar for the right moment to exploit the situation, was heartbreaking. Peter justified his actions as a necessity for our future, claiming that the money gained from this scheme was for our benefit. He asked for patience, suggesting that a mere 5-month wait wouldn't matter in the grand scheme of things. But the implications of his actions were far-reaching. Our child would be born out of wedlock, and I would be left with a divorce record from a marriage that never existed. This deception, built on financial motives, left me questioning the foundation of our relationship and what the future would hold for us. Peter seemed unfazed by the complexities of our situation, suggesting that a history of marriage or divorce was inconsequential since he was aware of the details. He argued that family records were often overlooked unless there was a clear issue, implying that my concerns were exaggerated. Peter believed I was making a big deal out of nothing, urging me to adopt a more flexible mindset. He revealed that in his business dealings, he had arranged sham marriages for foreigners, leveraging my name for financial gain. This scheme had netted us $12,000, though Peter hadn't anticipated the legal implications that prevented us from remarrying immediately. His admission shed light on his previous evasions whenever I brought up legal documentation or marriage registration. Peter was marking time, waiting for the sham marriage's 4-year duration to end, especially as my due date approached. He wanted to avoid the scenario where our child would be considered adopted, emphasizing his paternal instincts despite the deceitful backdrop. Peter reassured me that the blemish on my family record was temporary, promising that everything would be resolved in 5 months when we could legally marry. Yet, he trivialized the gravity of fabricating a marriage, viewing it as a simple transaction that benefited us financially and the foreign individual involved by paving their way to U.S. citizenship. When I suggested using the $12,000 for our wedding, Peter hesitated, eventually confessing that the money was gone, used to settle personal debts. This revelation only deepened my mistrust, highlighting his willingness to manipulate situations for his benefit, even at the cost of legal and ethical boundaries. Peter's vague explanations about his debts, coupled with his admission that he still owed money, painted a picture of a man ensnared in financial and moral turmoil. Despite his assurances, the fabric of trust between us was tearing, leaving me to grapple with the realization that the man I thought I knew was becoming more distant, obscured by his actions, and the shadow of deceit. In a shocking turn of events, my life took a dramatic and dangerous turn because of Peter's actions. He had used my identity to facilitate a sham marriage, a revelation that left me reeling and resolved to report him to the authorities for his crime. Despite his protests and a desperate attempt to stop me from going to the police, his actions led to a terrifying accident. As I was running to seek help, Peter pushed me, causing me to fall down the stairs. This harrowing fall resulted in my water breaking prematurely, and amidst the fear and pain, My only concern was the safety of my unborn child. Miraculously, despite the ordeal, my child was born safe and sound in the hospital. However, the gravity of Peter's betrayal and his reckless disregard for our lives became painfully clear. He never visited us in the hospital, cementing my resolve to never forgive him for endangering our child and showing such callousness towards the sanctity of life. Recovering from the birth and the fall, I found solace at my parents' home, where I confided everything to my mother. The shock and sympathy from her were palpable, reinforcing my determination to hold Peter accountable for his actions. My mother's quick research confirmed that Peter could face legal consequences for falsification of an official document, with penalties including imprisonment or a fine. However, the potential leniency of these consequences felt like a slap in the face, considering the severity of his actions. Fueled by a desire for justice and to protect others from a similar fate, I decided to confront Peter's parents. Leaving my child safely with my mother, I visited them to lay bare the full extent of Peter's deceit. The shock and disappointment were evident on their faces as they listened to my story, from the fraudulent marriage to the dangerous fall and the birth of my child under such distressing circumstances. Peter's parents were understandably upset by the news, expressing their apologies and sharing in my outrage. Their reaction only solidified my determination to seek justice for the wrongs committed against me and my child. The conversation also revealed Peter's ongoing financial troubles, adding another layer of complexity to his deceitful actions. As I left Peter's parents' house, my resolve was stronger than ever. The path forward would not be easy, but for the sake of my child and my dignity, I was prepared to take all necessary steps to ensure that Peter faced the consequences of his actions. The fight for justice was not just about retribution. It was about reclaiming my life and ensuring a safe and secure future for my child. During my recovery from the hospitalization, I sought a meeting with Peter's parents. My intention wasn't to ask for a favor, but to ensure they were fully aware of the entire situation. I explained that I could no longer forgive Peter for his actions and was planning to file for divorce. It was important for them to understand the potential complications their son's actions might cause in the future. I wanted to make it clear that maintaining the status quo was not an option, emphasizing the seriousness of the situation and my decision to move forward with the divorce. Peter's parents, upon hearing everything, expressed their disappointment and agreed that divorcing Peter was the right course of action. They even went as far as to say they would cut ties with him, should he seek their support. This firm stance from his parents was more than I could have asked for, and I was grateful for their understanding and acceptance of my decision. Furthermore, I made it clear that I intended to ensure Peter faced the consequences for endangering our child's life, even if it meant causing a rift between us. The gravity of the situation was not lost on me, nor was it on Peter's mother, who appeared visibly distressed at the thought of her son facing legal action. Despite understanding her anguish, my resolve to protect my child and seek justice remained unwavering. I asked Peter's parents if they could contact him, suggesting it would be better for Peter to turn himself in and offer an apology rather than face arrest unexpectedly. His mother agreed to call him without revealing my presence or discussing the sham marriage, simply expressing a desire to see him. Peter arrived, presumably expecting a family gathering, only to find me waiting. His reaction to my presence and the ensuing confrontation revealed his disregard for the severity of his actions. He attempted to dismiss the accusation of pushing me down the stairs as a mere accident and trivialized the sham marriage as a form of charity for foreigners seeking U.S. citizenship. His justifications fell flat, especially when faced with the reality that I had been kept in the dark about the entire scheme. Peter's lack of understanding of the legal ramifications of his actions, coupled with his indifference to the emotional and physical risks he had exposed me to, highlighted his irresponsible behavior. It was clear that he had not considered the legal and ethical implications of his actions, nor the importance of ensuring our family's stability and legality before our child's birth. This meeting underscored the necessity of my decision to seek a divorce and pursue legal action against Peter. His dismissive attitude and unwillingness to acknowledge the gravity of his actions only strengthened my resolve to protect my child and ensure that justice was served. In a heated exchange, Peter revealed his true colors, showing no remorse for the manipulation and deceit that had marred my life. He seemed indifferent to the legal and emotional turmoil he had caused, brushing off the serious implications of his actions with a cavalier attitude. Peter even suggested I engage in the same fraudulent scheme he had, indicating a complete disregard for the law and the well-being of our child. His suggestion that I could simply marry another foreigner for financial gain dismissing the fraud involved was appalling. Peter's audacity knew no bounds. He even insinuated threats against me and our child to dissuade me from going to the police. His callousness was evident in his attempt to manipulate me into silence, leveraging the safety of our child as leverage. This reprehensible behavior only solidified my decision to distance myself from him and his criminal activities. Despite Peter's threats, I stood firm, rejecting his twisted logic and making it clear that his actions were indefensible. His attempt to justify his behavior as a form of aid was ludicrous, especially after admitting to pushing me down the stairs, a confession that he quickly tried to downplay. In a moment of defiance, I misled Peter into thinking I would not report him to the police, a strategy to protect my child from any immediate harm he might cause. Peter, misconstruing my silence for acquiescence, smugly believed he had manipulated me into compliance. His parting words, filled with arrogance and a lack of remorse, were a chilling reminder of the person he truly was. However, my resolve was unwavering. Immediately after Peter left, I sought legal counsel to take decisive action against him. My visit to a lawyer was the first step in a legal battle to hold Peter accountable for his actions, a battle that was not just about seeking justice for myself, but also about protecting others from falling victim to his schemes. The lawsuit I filed prompted law enforcement to investigate the matter thoroughly, leading to significant repercussions for Peter and his accomplice. The foreign individual involved in the sham marriage was deported, and Peter faced legal consequences for his actions, including a prison sentence. This outcome, while a measure of justice, was a stark reminder of the costs of Peter's deceit, not just in emotional terms, but also in the tangible impact on lives and the legal system. Reflecting on the ordeal, it was clear that the time I spent entangled in Peter's lies was a painful chapter in my life. But it was a chapter that I was determined to close, armed with the strength and resolve to rebuild and ensure a safe and secure future for my child, free from the shadows of deception and crime. After serving a 6-year sentence, Peter was released from prison only to find himself facing a harsh reality. Without the support of his parents, who were deeply disappointed by his actions and chose not to assist him financially or visit him in prison, Peter was left to navigate life on his own. Despite the gravity of his situation, Peter appeared unfazed and even considered engaging in another fraudulent scheme involving a sham marriage. However, finding willing participants proved to be more challenging than he anticipated, leading him to a life marked by isolation and hardship. Without any form of support, Peter struggled to find employment due to his criminal record, and his living situation deteriorated to the point of near homelessness. In a desperate move, he approached me once again, hoping to persuade me to lend him my name for another one of his schemes. Shocked by his audacity and refusal to learn from his past mistakes, I firmly rejected his request. I advised him to seek legitimate employment instead of resorting to illegal activities, though it was unclear whether my words had any impact on him. After that encounter, Peter disappeared, leaving no trace of his whereabouts or his life's current state. As for me, I returned to my childhood home, where I have been focusing on raising my child with the help of my parents. Despite the initial challenges of childbirth and the tumultuous events that preceded it, my child is growing up healthy and vibrant, bringing joy and a sense of fulfillment to my daily life. These days, though demanding, have proven to be incredibly rewarding, offering me a fresh start and a chance to build a stable and happy future for my child, free from the shadows of the past.